Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're discussing Journey to Modernization, the City of Medicine Hat's Path to Microsoft 365 Maturity. My name is Amy Grundis. I'm happy to be your moderator today. Before we get started and have our guests join us, I just wanted to mention a couple of housekeeping items. So first off, this session is being recorded, and we'll be happy to provide you with a copy of the recording after the webinar is finished, so you'll have that for your future reference or to share with any of your colleagues. We also want to keep this session engaging and interactive, so we're going to have a few polls throughout the webinar. We'd love to see your input. It always helps us to understand where our audience is coming from and what are the current challenges that they're facing. So please participate in our polls by voting as those pop up. Speaking of being interactive and engaging, we also have the opportunity for questions at the end of the webinar. We've set aside a few minutes for that. So if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to put those in the chat in Teams or in the Q&A functionality, and we'll get to as many of those as we have time for. At the end of the webinar, we also have the opportunity to continue the conversation further. So if you're wondering where your organization ranks in terms of Microsoft maturity, or you're looking for some recommendations about where you can go next, Elantis is offering a free 1-hour assessment where we'll provide you with a report that will benchmark you against industry standards and also provide you recommendations for optimization. So if you're not able to stay until the end, we'll put a booking link for that assessment in the chat, and we'll also share it in email in a follow-up. All right, let's get started. So joining me today, I have Craig Fruin. He is Manager of Application Services at the City of Medicine Hat. Craig is an experienced people and technology leader. He's got over 20 years experience in IT delivery and management. And he's also on the board for Mesa Prairie, so very involved in the municipal community. As well, in our discussion today, we have Ambrel Watson. Ambrel is a client manager at Elantis Solutions. Welcome, Ambrel. Ambrel works closely with our clients, including the City of Medicine Hat, to help them achieve their goals using technologies. So welcome to you both. Thank you for being here. Let's get the discussion started. So I want to kind of start at the beginning. Maybe, Craig, you can share with us a little bit about the initial challenges that the City of Medicine Hat had been facing and what kind of motivated you guys to make the move to Microsoft 365.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Amy. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is when we started this, we thought we were moving to something called Office 365. Now we're moving to something called Microsoft 365. So I hope we're still on the same path. Obviously, that was one of the challenges, is just trying to keep up with some of the technology changes that are happening inside that Microsoft landscape. Anyway, like many organizations, the City of Medicine Hat faced several initial challenges when adapting to that remote work world that the pandemic rushed us into. We quickly deployed the technologies like VPN, LogMeIn, and even Microsoft Teams to ensure that we can continue to provide services to our residents. However, without a real true strategic vision, some governance around that, or a proper change management approach, we really led to some inefficiencies and highlighted some gaps in obviously compliance to records management and things like that, and security. But mostly it introduced a lot of confusion to us in IT and even those in the business units that are leveraging the technologies to help them serve our residents. So coming out of that, we had a major investment already made in our M365 licensing, simply for video conferencing, Microsoft Teams, and things like that, and supporting that remote work world. We really want to maximize that investment, since we knew that we were really sticking in that path and going down that avenue. So we really wanted to explore more of those features and availabilities that M365 had to offer us. One of the things that we did to kind of really help us along there, because we didn't know what to do, was we performed an Art of the Possible workshop with a consulting firm to really help us show us from an IT perspective what was possible with that technology, so to kind of better learn about what our challenges were. During that time, there were some significant things that were identified. There's the inconsistent use of tools and applications across our teams, across the entire organization. Difficulty in locating information quickly. That's definitely key. There's duplication of information stored in multiple locations. If I know where it's put, that's good for me, but maybe not for others. There's the need for that mobility. So continue to help out with that remote work world so that you can access information from various devices and locations. We had multiple tools serving the same purpose and causing a lot of confusion about what tool to use when. We had missing key features that are now available, like co-authoring and versioning and access control. Like those are key things that we're starting to realize now. And obviously some compliance issues with records management not integrated to those business workflows. It was essentially an afterthought. So ideally looking into that M365, we're hoping it could help us address a lot of those challenges.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And those are definitely common challenges. I'm sure a lot of organizations, even within our audience today and, across the country are facing similar things. Amber, maybe you want to chime in on that. Is that what you've seen in other organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. Many government agencies are really stuck in outdated processes, wasting around $40 billion a year, if you can believe that. And on top of that, they spend about 140 billion on gathering information, and they lose over 10 billion hours on paperwork alone. Clearly, something has to change. So if we use municipalities as our example, they're often bogged down by information overload, compliancy issues, which will drive up costs and complicates IT management, to Craig's point. They really need scalable solutions for the next 5 to 10 years in order to ensure that they're streamlining operations and cutting costs. That's really where Microsoft 365 comes in. It really helps streamline communication and collaboration with SharePoint, Teams, Viva, improving overall employee engagement and centralizing those documents. Power Apps and Power Automate enhances collaboration and speeds up processes, while Power BI supports smarter decision making. Plus, moving to the cloud slashes infrastructure costs and eases that IT burden with robust security to keep municipalities compliant. We have worked with lots of municipalities. A couple of examples are the District of West Vancouver and North Vancouver. Both were struggling with outdated systems like OpenText and other legacy EDRMS tools. And they're now moving into Microsoft 365 in a bid to modernize those operations. Even organizations like Winnipeg Airport Authority faces similar challenges. It's not just municipalities that are behind in their digital journey. These old systems are costly, inefficient, and they do need to be upgraded for better governance and efficiency. By embracing Microsoft 365 and super solid governance, municipalities can vastly improve operations, service delivery, and save costs. A win-win for the whole community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Craig, thinking about, these challenges, how far along now are you in implementing Microsoft 365 and approaching this journey? And what are your key priorities right now?
Sure. I'll just give you a little bit of background on our approach to moving forward with M365. So as you could probably guess, we're taking a phased approach to it while leaving lots of room for adjustments on our roadmap as we learn more about the M365 platform as it continuously evolves. There's something new almost every day. We talked about a few of those items today at our technical advisory team meeting here on site. I don't know about you, Amy, but it feels like almost impossible to keep up with the ever-changing M365 landscape. Like it's things are new every day, so it's good, it's exciting, but definitely hard to keep up. Anyways, the phases that we really established here was our phase one, which was our foundation setting. We started that in probably a couple years ago, where we started doing some governance, say, hey, look at how we're going to do some governance, doing a lot of planning, and trying to do a collaborations tools deployment, which was first with a pilot project. Phase two was really diving into our implementation. We're talking about collaboration tools rollout. We're doing some quick wins and performing a records management assessment to get some recommendations on how to proceed there. And then phase three is future state here. We're looking at records management modernization and continue to invest in the Microsoft 365 platform and obviously service improvement, seeing how we can build more workflows into it and better improve the service that we're providing to the business units. I should mention that adoption and change management is an overarching activity across all the phases that we had that I mentioned. And we've been significantly spending a lot of effort there. and it will continue to do so. It's important. We'll talk about a little bit that later. As for progress, we are successfully completed that phase 1 that I mentioned, which was the foundation setting, and are currently in phase 2 in our implementation. So I just want to highlight a couple things for everybody. We had we applied additional security hardening. That was our first step to our M365 tenant. We did data loss prevention, sensitivity labels, geo restriction, guest access controls. We also implemented M365 governance tool by the name of Orchestry to help the management of our Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and groups, just kind of provisioning and managing all the world that's going on there. This was our first step, and it was very important to give us the confidence to kind of keep moving forward. We also established what we call an M365 Champions Network. This is with representation from all departments in the city. They meet on a monthly basis, and they're really there to learn the M365 technologies, discuss issues that they're having with it, and determine solutions and best practices on how to move that throughout the organization. We launched a new intranet/employee hub. We have coined it Insight, which is a SharePoint communication site, and that's where our communications engagement and marketing team is really trying to bolster our internal communication. We delivered organization-wide training on the collaboration features provided by Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, along with extensive training and reference material. We continue to offer quarterly training just so people can refresh and keep up on some of the new things that we're learning along the way as well. We deployed departmental sites. We call them collaboration spaces here, just to kind of give it a bit of a coin and a little bit more of that agnostic feel to it. They're actually just SharePoint team sites connected with Microsoft Teams. We also provided that training to the departments and their administrative staff and some of their directors and leaders, just so that they can begin digitizing some of the departmental-wide processes and really getting that familiarization with the technology itself. We've taken additional steps to invest in and demonstrate the value of what SharePoint can do for us. We launched a couple key high-profile cross-organizational processes. These were kind of like, the business unit really wanted to do this, and right in the midst of some of the training that we were doing. So it was a little tricky in the coordination, but it worked out well for us. The budget review process, we launched on a new SharePoint collaboration site, and our planning and development's technical coordination committee. We also performed that records management assessment that I talked about, just to better understand the steps that we needed to become more compliant with legislation and our own internal policies, as well as modernize the technology to kind of get it back into the business workflows and not an afterthought, just to support those record management processes. So moving forward, like our key priorities moving forward, we're going to continue to migrate all our staff to OneDrive. They're not quite there yet. We're moving into the second stage of our collaboration tools, which is SharePoint and Microsoft Teams deployment. We are looking to take deeper dives into the departments and migrate the functions that they're currently performing on our existing file server into SharePoint. So it's usually a combination of email and file server, as most people would know. We're also in the midst of deployment and adoption of our Microsoft Power Automate and Power Apps at a foundational level. So we're trying to take that same approach that I mentioned to the collaboration tools to kind of help us give a better understanding of how we can automate some of those repeatable day-to-day tasks and processes that were there. And obviously, I mentioned it before, we're going to continue that adoption and change management activities throughout.
Great. Yeah, so lots of progress and lots more to come. Could you share a little bit more about maybe some of the benefits that you've achieved thus far?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, we're still in the progress of trying to realize those benefits. It sounded like a lot of work to do, but there's always more to do, right? So the benefits of adopting Microsoft, but we continue to remind ourselves the following reasons for our efforts. So this is why we're doing the rollout. We're trying to modernize. We aim to enable like modern collaboration techniques that make work easier and faster. This includes improving access controls for both internal staff and external partners, continue to enable mobility so that we can work from anywhere, anytime, on any device. and that automation of those day-to-day tasks and processes. Really, that's our vision for modernization. So that's one of our priorities moving forward. Findability, this is definitely key. We need to enhance that ability to quickly find information, whether it's internally or externally, that is captured in our documents and records. This will streamline some of the workflows our business processes are doing and improve efficiency and compliance. Obviously, we are working towards becoming fully compliant with records management standards. This is crucial for maintaining the integrity and security of our information. But personally, I feel the biggest benefit from a work perspective has been the realization of that advancement in mobility. Previously, we were anchored to the corporate network or had to use VPN. Adopting OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint allows us to work pretty much anywhere, anytime, on any device. And for those cybersecurity and information protection-minded folks in their room, we're achieving this through safe and secure methods, so MFA and all that kind of stuff. But that's really beneficial.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Is there any of the specific projects that you might want to give us a little bit more details into that you've done recently?
Yeah, I'd like to dive a little bit more into the budget review and technical coordination committee processes that we have migrated onto SharePoint. These projects were very similar in nature, as they were administration and process heavy. Controlling versions of documents and files that were circulated and collaborated on through a combination of email and network file shares was a significant challenge. We've all been there, right? Like, you're drafting a version of a document that's located to a location that you only have access to. You're emailing it to a set of collaborators and then juggling the feedback and revisions coming back from different people at different times in different ways. You make your best effort to consolidate all that feedback in the master document, and then once again you're circulating that back out through email for review and final review, and hopefully you got it all right. So imagine some of these processes that involve our senior leaders across the organization, and you're trying to do the same thing with multiple departments, multiple people. It's got to be scary, right? Like, I can't imagine having to facilitate that process. So in both these cases, we launched SharePoint team sites. Like I mentioned before, we call them collaboration spaces that provided the process owners and administrators with a central location so that they can communicate their objectives, their timelines, to provide access to the deliverables, and supporting documentation. Like, training is important, right? Hey, what am I supposed to do here? What do you want me to add to this document? So with that area, right, in an area that they can take advantage of those modern collaboration techniques, such as co-authoring of documents while maintaining those strict permission structures that you need to have when you're dealing with things like budget. Both solutions were well received and reduced that administrative overhead I mentioned previously. So for us, this was an added benefit to even our change management approach because it exposed our senior leaders, like I mentioned, to the SharePoint capabilities. So at the end of the day, leveraging it, and if it made their lives easier, they're going to become champions of the technology as well.
Absolutely, Craig. Those are fantastic points that you make for your organization. Microsoft 365 is a game changer for municipalities, for real. It transforms how teams collaborate with Microsoft Teams, enabling real-time teamwork and Copilot automating routine tasks, making workflows smoother and boosting productivity. Tools like Viva enhance the employee experience by connecting them to essential resources, while Stream makes video content easily accessible. Now, the real magic of Microsoft 365 is its cloud-based flexibility. And like Craig mentioned, you can work from anywhere, anytime, from any device, which is crucial as remote and hybrid work models become more of the norm. Plus, IT management is simplified with everything consolidated into one admin console. So less headaches for all you IT folks out there. Municipalities already using Microsoft 365 are seeing huge benefits, not just in cost savings, but also improved efficiency, service delivery, and et cetera. So in fact, there's a Forrester report that shows by switching to Microsoft 365, you can save almost $5,000 per user over 3 years with a 205% ROI compared to the high costs of maintaining legacy systems. Now, I mean, I would go for that deal.
Yeah, big benefits to be achieved. Absolutely. So let's shift to talking a little bit about the technical foundation. Craig, you touched very briefly on some automation initiatives. So what is Medicine Hat doing to lay the foundation for success with the Power Platform?
Well, now we get to talk about some fun stuff, a little bit of that automation, right? So, obviously, we're taking baby steps, obviously, but business process automation is something a lot of folks in our organization have been asking for. As I mentioned earlier, one of our current priorities is the deployment and adoption of Microsoft Power Automate and apps at a foundational level, just to enable that automation of repeatable day-to-day tasks and processes. The steps that we are taking to establish that solid environment for the platform is we're currently reviewing our platform environment configuration and governance practices. Out of that, we'll probably implement those recommendations. It's a very similar approach that we took with the collaboration tools. We're implementing the Power Platform Center of Excellence to provide a central oversight of our Power Platform environment. It'll kind of give us that full picture of what's going on in that space. We're going to identify and deliver a Power Apps pilot just to showcase the capabilities and benefits to the organization on that. And obviously, establishing a training and awareness program to drive the adoption. We're also trying to grab early adopters or champions for the automation processes in the organization to work with on that.
Nice. So can we dig into a little bit more about what a center of excellence is and why that's important?
Yeah, certainly. I'll grab this one. So think of the Center of Excellence or your COE as the heartbeat of innovation in your organization. It's like the command center for your Power Platform tools. So imagine having Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power BI supercharging your business processes, all while keeping things in check with central oversight. The COE helps ensure that while your teams innovate and automate, they're also following best practices and governance rules. Companies with a COE see a significant boost in user adoption. And the reason for that is the COE fosters a community of collaboration and ensures consistency. For instance, it helps manage the rise of citizen developers, people who create apps and solutions with the Power Platform, but need guidance to stay aligned with company standards. Plus, a COE helps tackle technical debt, which can pile up from orphaned apps and untracked data. It provides tools like Power BI dashboard templates to track and analyze usage, making it easier for IT and business leaders to make informed decisions and rationalize their Power Platform assets. So in short, a COE offers the framework for secure, scalable, and compliant solutions while empowering everyone to innovate and collaborate effectively. It's like a dream. It's like having a well-oiled machine that keeps your digital transformation on track and thriving.
Nice. And Craig, did you want to add anything to that specific to Medicine Hat?
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to add is that what we are hoping to get out of the COE is that it's going to provide the confidence, like from an IT perspective, to enable the business to be part of that development process. For anyone out there who's IT, sometimes we have control issues, right? So we're really hoping that that'll help out with that. When it comes to automation, sometimes IT tends to become a bottleneck due to limited resources and competing priorities. By introducing the COE and strengthening our governance process, we really aim to embrace that concept that Ambro mentioned around that citizen developer so that we can empower the staff to automate their own processes and tasks.
That sounds great. And could you also share a little bit about how Elantis has supported different parts of your Microsoft 365 journey, particularly thinking about that adoption and training piece that we've touched on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'd like to say is, Atlantis took the time to listen to us and understand how we wanted to approach the adoption and change management process. That's where we had a lot of conversation because we want to put that first and center, rather than, hey, let's dive into the technology. We really wanted to kind of bring that forward. We had been doing our best to take a human-first approach while deploying M365 technologies. Knowing that we were fundamentally changing how people perform their day-to-day work. Atlantis provided us with the training and materials that increased our confidence to be the face of this change as we entered that Microsoft modern workplace.
Yeah, for sure. Great point, Craig. So, I mean, we're humans. Change can be tough. We're naturally hardwired to resist it. So, when new technology comes in, it often disrupts the way things are done. If your team isn't on board with the new technology, all of that investment is pretty much a waste. Nobody wants that. So, a study says that about 40% of employees say that the fear of the unknown is why they push back against new systems. That's where organizational change management and training really come into play. At Elantis, we make sure that to transition to new tools like Microsoft 365 is as smooth as it can possibly be. We'll tackle resistance head on and foster a positive attitude towards change. For example, we use detailed playbooks to create custom change management plans for leaders and change champions. This way, even as employees move roles or join the team, the knowledge really sticks. We also offer various training formats to match our clients' needs, really anything from virtual workshops with recordings for future reference to hands-on in-person sessions led by our solution architects. For example, with the City of London, we provided them training videos and virtual sessions so that it would ease their transition and ensure that everyone really felt confident moving forward using the new tools. Ultimately, our goal is to make sure that your team not only adopts the new technology, but really thrives and excels in it. We believe that when people are engaged and supported, the technology investment truly, truly pays off.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's so important. So, Craig, thinking about how you've approached this rollout, you've been quite thoughtful in establishing these phases and being pragmatic about how you roll out different apps and features. So, could you share a little bit more about your rationale behind that and some of the benefits?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is like, well, that's great. I feel like that's a compliment because sometimes it doesn't feel like a pragmatic approach. Sometimes we're just kind of guessing and moving forward. It feels a little bit more chaotic than perhaps you're articulating there. But there's several kind of reasons for taking that approach. Internal knowledge is one. As we roll out M365, we are learning continuously. This means we need to be selective about where we focus our efforts, right? Just to ensure our technical team is fully prepared to support the new technologies as they're being deployed. Budget and licensing is definitely a constraint. Currently, we are at M365 E3 licensing for our knowledge workers, right? This limits how far we can take the M365 platform. E5 licensing offers advanced security and compliance features that we truly really want to take advantage of. To secure additional operational funding for E5 licensing, we needed to demonstrate the value of what M365 could bring to the organization. The other one is, we've talked about it quite a bit, is that user adoption. This is perhaps the most crucial factor. City staff is dedicated to providing the best service to our residents, and any technology deployment must consider this. Even the best solution will not be successful if staff cannot see how it's going to help their day-to-day work. For us to leverage advanced features in M365, such as automation, compliance, and even AI, we need our information to be in M365. Low adoption from our staff would significantly hinder our ability to take full advantage of the M365 technologies. So really need to make sure that everyone's bought in and contributing and moving in the same way.
That's great. Yeah. And I'm actually really glad that you mentioned about the licensing piece because that was one of our questions in the chat was about whether you had E5 licenses and we're taking advantage of those. So good stuff. You also mentioned AI there. So how does the city see AI tools like Copilot impacting your strategy in the future?
AI will significantly impact our strategy. I call it may even disrupt it, right? We're just in our infancy of our AI journey. We recently released Copilot for the web, and we're still working that through the organization and trying to get them to see the value in using Copilot for the web. We started education and awareness initiatives. We even had a presentation done by Microsoft to our senior leaders, which really sparked some interest into what AI could do with inside the organization. As we plan to take greater advantage of AI tools like Microsoft Copilot in the future to assist with various internal and citizen-facing services, that's really where we're seeing that vision. And there's definitely business units that are more in tune to that than others. But determining what, when, and how is essentially where we're at.
Yeah, Amber, is there anything you'd like to add to what we're seeing in the world of AI these days?
Yeah, just a little bit. There's always conversations. I think Craig touches on something important, which is a slow roll. You've got two differences of organizations trying to run to it and organizations who are taking baby steps, as Craig referred to. So not all organizations are ready for it today, but there are a lot of municipalities who are really embracing AI to enhance their efficiency and their service delivery. So take the city of Kelowna, for example. Kelowna is developing artificial intelligence, or AI, to help streamline planning, development, and permitting processes. The city has also implemented AI-driven chatbots across multiple service channels, significantly reducing the time staff spend on routine inquiries, allowing them to focus more on complex issues and enhancing overall customer service. That's a massive win for operational efficiency and cost savings for that city. At Atlantis, we are really at the forefront of this transformation, particularly with tools like Microsoft Copilot. According to a report released recently on Work Trends, after adopting Copilot, 70% of users reported a significant productivity boost, and 77% want to keep using it. It's quickly becoming a must-have for modern organizations, including the public sector. So Copilot will automate routine tasks like approvals and admin work. It frees up staff to focus on more complex issues. So this means cities aren't just improving productivity, they're also seeing real ROI with better efficiency. At Atlantis, we help municipalities navigate these changes, as Craig said, they're every day, to maximize their AI investments. We even offer a one-day Copilot planning workshop, which will help cities unlock Copilot's full potential and smooth their transition to this exciting technology. So if you want to stay ahead in the digital game, Copilot's a great option to consider.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. Certainly lots of benefits to be had, but like Craig said, organizations need to carefully plan it and make sure they're ready. So great advice. And on the topic of advice, Craig, is there any advice you would give other municipalities who are on a similar journey or considering embarking on a similar journey to M365?
I'd say take a slow and steady approach. Remember, you're changing how people work. What might seem trivial to someone in IT, and it does a lot of times. Like we ran into this in the past with some stumbling blocks. This isn't the first time we tried to roll out SharePoint. It takes a couple times just to kind of learn and adjust your efforts. It's going to be significant to other staff, especially administrative staff in the organization. So I'd say put people first, understand their world so that you can better apply the technology to work for them. Additionally, I'd say establish strong relationships and partnerships with Microsoft and even M365 consultants who live and breathe this ever-evolving M365 landscape. Municipal IT professionals, as we all know, support a plethora of technology. So having the ability to pull on resources that can quickly ramp you up to speed and provide some helping hands usually at a cost, of course, right? It's got to keep that in mind. But anyway, it is valuable to kind of maintain that momentum is to have those strong partnerships.
Yeah, great comments. Absolutely. And Amber, would you mind also sharing, what we've seen at other municipalities or public sector organizations who are likewise modernizing with M365?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a chance to work with some fantastic municipalities and public sector organizations over the years. For example, at the City of Vancouver, we implemented department sites and a brand new intranet using SharePoint. The feedback has been outstanding. People are finding information faster and collaborating more effectively. We also recently wrapped up a project with Infrastructure Ontario, where they were struggling with sprawl in their SharePoint environment. This is a common conversation and pain point that we have with a lot of clients. And as more and more people embraced Microsoft 365, they actually outgrew their previous information structure and SharePoint design. So Atlantis realigned it with best practices and made it more scalable for long-term growth. Another example is we recently tackled a really big project for a federal security organization where we automated Microsoft Teams provisioning. This was to maintain appropriate permissions and governance while making it easier for users to share information safely. These are just a few examples, but our goal is always to enhance collaboration, improve efficiency, and deliver solutions that truly make a difference with that human-centric approach.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for sharing those customer stories. So looking ahead now, what is the future of collaboration and automation and Microsoft 365 in general at the City of Medicine Hat?
Yeah, we're definitely going to continue on that journey towards that modernization, findability, and compliance that we mentioned earlier. Some of the big projects that are coming up here would be kind of talked already is that advanced collaboration tools deployment, which is SharePoint Teams. We'll continue to deepen the deployment of SharePoint and Teams within inside of each of the departments from now until the end of 25, 26. It all depends on when they have the time and capacity to kind of help us on. Like from some of the goals that we're hoping to get out of that is file migration from our network file shares and setting ourselves up for success with records management modernization. Obviously, we're doing the Power Apps and automate foundational deployment. We will further develop our foundational deployment of Power Apps and automate to streamline processes and improve efficiencies. We talked about that before. Moving to E5 licensing, I should say, to take advantage of those advanced features. That's a big initiative that we're trying to push forward through with trying to secure budget and all that kind of stuff through business cases so that we can take advantage and embrace some of those new things. One of our visions in regards to records management is in-place records management so that you're working with your documents and the records in the same place, same system. Also replacing other systems that we have that kind of are doing the same things that we could get from the new E5 licensing and consolidating technology as well. I guess in regards to that E5 licensing, we want to begin, like I said, modernizing our records management using Microsoft Purview. And also we are hoping to implement Microsoft Sentinel to enhance our cybersecurity posture. Throughout these initiatives, we will continue to focus on that adoption and change management through additional training, frequent communications, and driving usage through our tactical solution delivery. So if a department wants to migrate a cross-organizational workflow into SharePoint, we'll definitely be working with them on that.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing those insights and also Ambrose for your comments and thoughts as well. We do have a few audience questions. Some of them I think have been answered a little bit throughout your comments, so we'll get to as many as possible in the next few minutes here. So for Craig, you mentioned kind of at the outset a few different implementation stages where you talked about some of the more strategic initiatives, the planning and the foundation setting, not in that order, of course. But could you talk a little bit about your timelines for those stages, what you expect that to be?
Yeah, they're a little bit fluid, but I'll do my best. So for our first phase, we really started looking at this in 2021. We started to kind of explore that option, and that continued to roll out through all of 2023. And we just kind of wrapped it up earlier in this year. So that was our foundational setting. So there's various projects in there as well. Phase two was our implementation, obviously overlapped a little bit. So we began that in 2023, but we kind of expect that to roll. We're hoping to be completed by the end of the year, but that's definitely not going to happen with the deeper dives into the departments. So that's going to slide out into 25. And then for that phase three area, some of those strategic initiatives we're talking about, that's hinging on our budget cycle for 25, 26. So that's when we'll really start getting moving on that stuff is throughout that 25, 26 period would be more of those strategic initiatives that I mentioned.
Nice, nice. And one of the other things you talked a lot about was, the adoption training for users. So someone in our audience has asked about whether you've made the training mandatory for all employees using SharePoint. Maybe you could explain a bit about your rationale on that.
We haven't made it mandatory. It's been optional to this point. I think when we rolled into the different departments and offered that department-specific training, we're really looking at the leaders to kind of provide the guidance there about who needs to be trained. We haven't done that initiative, say, okay, who actually needs it? So does the guy in the field truck need to really take SharePoint and Teams training and things like that? So it hasn't been mandatory. There may be some things that come out of the records management initiative that might be some of those more compliance things, but it's been optional up until this point. But we've had good success rate from people willing to take that training. At our quarterlies, we're looking at from 30 to 50 people joining those refresher trainings. So it's good to see.
Nice. That's great. And another question for you, Craig. You're on the hot seat. Lots of these
Oh,
are
I know.
addressed to you. So did you migrate all of your files just to SharePoint or also to some other service like Azure File Services? Are there any files that need to stay on-prem and why?
Oh, that's a lot of questions. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done that real file migration there. Like our approach when we were moving into the departments is we call them active documents. What are you actively working on so that you can move those into SharePoint and really start taking the advantage of the collaboration features. In the deeper dives and stuff like that, we are going to try to migrate most of our stuff into I guess SharePoint land. Is everything going to go there? No, there's definitely kind of files that don't belong there. EXTs, DLLs, all that fun techno stuff. Those don't belong there. We've also leveraged AWS storage as well for like archival type records. So like imagery, rich media, and things like that that don't necessarily get accessed all the time. A good example of that would be our archives team. We have an Esplanade, and they look at after all the historical documents and good things that have happened in the Medicine Hat area, and they deal with a lot of media. So we've enabled them to do that through low cost, pay as you go type storage with inside of AWS.
Nice. Thank you for answering that. We've got two kind of questions about how you've structured your IT and your organization, so maybe I'll kind of ask these together. So first off, does IT management fall within IT or sit as some other part of the organization with support from IT? And then also, was a RACI developed to manage M365? Do you have separate admins for SharePoint and Teams or separate teams for different areas of Microsoft? So maybe you could just talk a little bit about your
Yeah,
IT structure
I'll
there.
do my best. Yeah, so information management, part of it lives with inside of IT. We've definitely been instrumental in trying to improve that. But the big partner really is with our city clerk's office. That's really where records management lies in our organization. And then IT is a key partner in that with supporting the technologies and providing advice on approaches and things like that. So it's kind of a combination, but the accountability definitely is at our city clerk's office. In regards to IT structure, it's a little bit fluid. I really kind of started with our normal system administrators, M365 platform administrators, really kind of owning that environment. As we've worked together and brought in some of those tools such as Orchestry and the Center of Excellence, some of that responsibility is migrating into other teams. So, it's that control thing that we talked about earlier, right? So the more that we get confident and put the right structure and governance in place, some of those responsibilities are starting to shift. So, if we use that example that was mentioned, the Microsoft SharePoint and Teams provisioning used to belong in one side of the fence with inside of our IT team. It has now shifted into a group we call our continuous improvement team. They're really business systems analysts at the end of the day. Now they are working with the business and provisioning SharePoint sites and Teams through our Orchestry tool.
Great. Thank you so much for covering that. We
And
do
I
have a
didn't
few
talk
more.
about a RACI though. I didn't mention a RACI. Some
Did
might
you
think that's
want to?
well, talk about a little bit. So what we did while we're trying to figure all this stuff out, I've actually talked about it today, where we need to refresh it, is we drafted up an M365 governance framework, where we kind of established like committees with inside of IT, and try to define what their roles are. And then we built out a bit of, I wouldn't call it a RACI, but a nice little table that said like the different Microsoft products and what team's responsible for it and who is the person, the individual who leading that initiative. So I wouldn't call it a RACI, but we tried to put a structure down so that things were more clear about who does what, and we can refer to it just when we forget sometimes.
That's great. Makes perfect sense. Thank you again for sharing that. We do have quite a few more questions, but we'll have to follow up outside this webinar as we are just about out of time. So I just wanted to mention a few things in our closing. Thinking about Microsoft 365 maturity, I want to reiterate, if you're interested in understanding kind of where you fit in terms of industry benchmarking, if you'd like some recommendations or some guidance on how to address specific challenges within Microsoft 365, we'd be happy to provide a complimentary 1-hour consultation where we can go through different aspects of the Microsoft 365 platform, discuss kind of where you're at, and address how you can further optimize and enhance that environment. So we'll have a link in the chat as well for that if you're interested in having a chat with one of our experts. As well, one last thing to mention, because we have a lot of municipalities on the call today, Atlantis is in Whistler for the MISA BC conference. So if you happen to be attending that conference, if you're from BC, we would love to see you. We have a presentation there with another Atlantis client, which is the District of West Vancouver. And we'll be sharing there about how we are modernizing their document and records management system using Microsoft 365. So they'll have lots of great insights to share as well. And in case you can't make it to the conference, feel free to follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, so you'll get lots of updates about future events with Atlantis and industry information about Microsoft. So thank you both again, Ambril and Craig, for joining us today. We really appreciated your comments and insights. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See you, everybody. Thank you so much.